look at what's making news in print and online this morning. We're joined by research fellow at Deakin University and podcaster Kirsten Diprose. Kirsten, good morning to you.
Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
I just touched on it then, speaking to Mads, the push by the ACTU to see minimum wage earners get a 7% increase.
Yeah, I think dominating the headlines across newspapers today is not necessarily this story, but stories all relating to cost of living pressures, housing crisis. You know, it's the top of everyone's mind right now. And I guess this is the union's way of thinking about this and addressing this. So the Australian Council of Trade Unions will urge the Fair Work Commission to lift the minimum hourly rate for workers, for minimum workers, for $21.38 an hour is what it is currently, to $22.88 from July 1. So in annual terms, that's about $3,000 extra a year, with a minimum annual salary of more than $45,000. But interestingly, it's not just the minimum hourly rate they want to see go up. It's right up the pay scale. So some award wage earners as well. So, you know, hospitality, the minimum award rate there, $66,000. So the Financial Review is reporting that the ACTU wants to see that lifted. $82,000 is the minimum for engineers and $200,000 for pilots. So in all, that's 2.6 million workers that unions would like to see a pay increase for. Now, obviously, the inflationary pressures are the reason that they're giving that in real terms, wages have gone down over the past 2 years. And look, politically, we know that the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, his election mantra was always about the minimum, wage and making sure that workers do not go backwards in real terms. But as you mentioned just before, I heard you talking about how inflation has eased. We got those February results just yesterday, and with that easing of inflation, we've got some people arguing, such as the Australian Industry Group, that we should be holding off on any wage rise. So it'll be interesting to see where this debate goes next.
Okay, let's go to The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. Got a great story pretty much telling a lot of young people what they already know, and that is that they'll increasingly have to rely on the bank of mum and dad to get a foothold into the housing market.
Yeah, look, it's certainly an eye-catching headline, and I think it's almost slightly misleading in that it kind of makes you think that, you know, people are just sitting back waiting on the bank of mum and dad, as you said, to inherit the money. But actually, it's kind of a sad state of affairs in that this report, it's an exclusive by The Age today, has found that 2/3 of prospective home buyers believe that the only way they can actually afford a property is if they inherit it from their parents. And I'm not going to comment on that as a financial strategy, but this survey was of 5,000 people. It was for the Australian Housing Monitor and launched today by Per Capita, which is a think tank. And the most interesting statistic it found was that 85% of non-home owners hope to buy a property, but only 24% think they actually have the financial resources to do so. We know that Australia's got one of the most expensive housing markets in the world. In fact, we've seen house prices doubled over the past 10 years. And of course, rents are soaring. So it is really tough. And I just think it's a really interesting time to release this survey, because I think we as a society, and look, even the media, focus a lot on homeowners and the mortgage stress, and we talk a lot about the Reserve Bank, and we will be talking a lot about what it's doing over the next few days, whether it's going to keep rates on hold or move them up. But, you know, there's just a whole lot of people who just can't even get a foot in the door. So, you know, it's a difficult balancing act that we as a society are trying to work out right now.
Yeah, well said.
Kirsten, you've clearly have great expertise in the bush. I want to turn your mind to John Kerin, who was a long-serving minister in former Labor governments, with a legacy that's been left of a great contribution to the agriculture industry.
Yeah, that's right. The newspapers, the ag newspapers, are really focusing on the life of John Kerrin, which is wonderful to see. I think he's perhaps one of those ministers who may not be remembered as broadly as perhaps he should be, because he certainly left a mark in agriculture as being a very reformist minister and really leading the way and paving the way for research and development. And I have to sort of, declare my bias here in that I do work in research involving, agriculture, but I don't think many people would disagree with a statement, like Australia has, one of the leading research and development in agriculture. I think that's pretty widely recognised, and it's interesting to reflect on John Kerrin's role in setting that up and changing the governance. So John Kerrin, he was born in New South Wales in Bowral, and he was a chicken farmer, and he also had an arts degree and an economics degree, and he became a research economist as well for what's now known as ABARES. But then, of course, he became a minister in the Whitlam government, but it was under the Hawke government that he really sort of made those reforms in agriculture. And it was a pretty tough time to do it. There were some quite protectionist policies, and not everyone was happy at the time. In fact, he had to have police protection for several dairy farm meetings when he was looking at reforming that area. But his key reforms were all about boosting research and using that as a driver of farm productivity. And so that's how he'll largely be remembered. There was a very unfortunate gaffe that he made that I think some people will remember when he was Treasurer under Hawke. He made a gaffe where he couldn't remember the acronym GOS, which is Gross Operating Surplus, and I reckon for the rest of his life he never forgot it. And that caused him to lose his role as Treasurer at the time. But look, he then eventually retired from politics in 1993 and went on to have, a great career working for many agricultural organisations on several boards, including the Meat and Livestock Corporation. So I think his legacy will truly be the changes he's made to agriculture, and it can still be seen today. So I think it's really worth, remembering this man, and certainly the agriculture industry is.
Yeah, and certainly from people in the know back in the day, John was one of the genuinely decent politicians, public figures there in Canberra. Interesting you mentioned that slip as Treasurer. Yes, he never forgot it, but it also came in the dynamic of the Hawke-Keating leadership psychodrama, which, was, and John Kerrin's mistake. It was a mistake. He was pretty much collateral damage in the wider Hawke v Keating drama at the time.
We'll remember and reflect on his contribution to agriculture today, hey? Kirsten, thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Michael.
Now,